here back there? Okay, I'll speak up. Well, good evening and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are very pleased that we were able to put this together for you guys tonight, for you all and for you all. We're very excited. My name is Carrie Kingsbury. I'm president of the Cooke County Republican Women. And I would like to thank you all for your support of our club. Your coming here and supporting us means a lot to us, so thank you so much for that. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the Cross Timbers Church and Pastor Ray Luke for graciously allowing us to continue to meet in this wonderful location. We really appreciate it. It's a wonderful facility. I am going to go ahead and officially call the meeting to order, so I would ask you please to silence your cell phones if you have not done so already. We will be live streaming the event tonight on Facebook, we think. So we don't want to have a bunch of cell phones going off while we're trying to do that. We're going to have a very condensed meeting format tonight to give us as much time as possible for the candidate forum and the candidates time to stay after so that you can get together with them and visit with them and ask your individual questions at that time. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce you and introduce Ms. Erlina Hume, who is our new chaplain, to lead us in the invocation and the pledges. Erlina.
Short. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today with a loving heart and thanksgiving for all the blessings that you've given us. Lord, we ask that you watch over all of our elected officials as we're going through these trying times. Lord, both federally and state, as we go through the trenches over the next few weeks. Lord, I also ask you to forgive us where we've had not really shown our servant heart and where we've had any kind of conflicts with you. Lord, we ask that you forgive us for those sins. Lord, we also ask that you put your blessing on all of these candidates tonight. Let them speak with a servant heart. Let them show us what they're looking for as far as what they can do for our community. Lord, we ask all these blessings in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Now we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please stand. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Erlina. And now I'd like to have Marcy Gilbert, our treasurer, join us and provide us with the treasurer's report, the first one of the year.
Good evening and welcome. The treasurer's report account had a beginning balance October the 1st, 2020 of $4,580.84. We had 2 deposits totaling $927.23 and 3 disbursements totaling $548.02, leaving an ending balance as of December 31st, 2020 of $4,960.05. In our PAC treasurer's account, we had a beginning balance October the 1st, 2020 of $9,763.58. There were 7 deposits totaling $7,116.09. There were 17 disbursements totaling $6,467.61. This left us an ending balance as of December 31st, 2020 of $10,412.06.
Okay, Jennifer, can you give us a membership report, please?
Yes, ma'am. So Pauline and I talked about, we took existing members back to 0. So for the new year, the only thing that I'm not sure about is just tipping that we're talking about. I think anyway, so we have 4 new members. This was as of December 16th. 4 new members, 15 renewing members for a total membership of 19. And then associate members, we had 4 new associate members and 7 renewing for a total of 14 associate members. Okay, great.
And it is the first of the year. Our membership is a yearly membership, so we are going to be thrilled with any new members that plan to join us. We would love to have them. Bring your friends and family and invite them to any meeting, please. And if you have been a member and haven't renewed yet, we would love for you to renew your membership. So thank you so much. And then Margaret Carter, our legislative chair, if you could join us for a little legislative report.
First of all, I'll be the first one to remind you that the new election, one of these terms, is January 23rd, and early voting begins January 11th and runs to the 19th. And then just 4 quick points for legislative. There seems to be a lot of concern in the community about Senator John Cornyn's not willing to stand up with the other GOP members to object to the electoral college vote, and made people, there's a lot of anger out there. Anyway, there was a lot of information on the radio and TV, and people were encouraging everyone to write to your senator, to email him or whatever, to encourage him to do that. Senator Cronin did not do that, and so he wrote a letter apparently to Texans, a long letter that I couldn't find, but the summary of it is he just felt like there wasn't enough evidence, although I don't know who looked at the evidence that was collected, and that he couldn't, and he approached it as a judge would, and looked at the odds, and he felt it was not a winnable situation. And, we're paying him our tax dollars to be a senator. We're not paying him to be a judge. So, if anybody else has that concern, I would encourage you to look at his website. And he has a beautiful website, and you can see everything he's been involved in, and if you're happy with it, fine. If you're not happy with it, or you don't feel he's working for the average, everyday Texan, then this would be a good time to start the emails again. And anyway, just let him know what you're thinking. You'll get a response that they received it, but I think probably he was overwhelmed with emails because we never heard anything back, and then he did write this long letter, so eventually that will surface. So we would encourage you to do that. And then the other thing is, if he has been in office for quite some time, many years, and we can keep our eye open for other young, energetic, possible candidates who look like they would be a good fit for that job. So just keep your eyes open. If you see anybody that you think is interested, that looks interesting, that looks exciting, is articulate or energetic, maybe we can start looking around to see if anybody can improve on what we've got now. So anyway, that's it. The rest will be in the newsletter, and so anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Hey, I forgot to mention to you, I did put Senator Cornyn's information on the bottom of the agenda that was at the front desk for this evening, so if you didn't pick one up and you'd like that, go ahead and do that. I also put my contact information, my email, and the reason is we, as a board and committee chairs, are going to get together this weekend, actually, and do some planning for 2021. And I asked this last year, and I got a lot of good feedback and a lot of good ideas, and I'd like to do that again. I'd like for you to, if you've got feedback that you'd like to give us as a club, if you've got ideas of what you want to hear, what you're interested in hearing, what you'd like for us to research and look out for you for next year, let us know what it is, because we try our best to fulfill those needs, but we may not know what they are. So if you just are interested, you have ideas and feedback, I'd like for you to do that. So thank you so much for that. And now I would like to move on and introduce our program tonight. Our VP of Programs, Ms. Tiffany Lester, is going to give us that introduction. Tiffany.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here this evening. Kimsey Moss is our Vice President of Campaign Activities, and she has put this forum on for everyone, so she's done a lot of good work, and so without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to her. She's going to be the moderator for this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. So everybody, thank you for coming. The way that this is going to work is they were given a schedule ahead of time, so they will have 3 minutes of introduction, and we're going to do it in the order of the Secretary of State, so the way that they're on stage from left to right. I want to introduce you to Bob Kingsbury. He is going to be our timekeeper. He is going to be telling you when the time is up. And we do need to keep to a schedule because we have so many questions. So we're going to have 9 different questions, and then we're giving each candidate a minute and a half so that we have time to go through each of the questions, and then a 3-minute closing statement. After the closing statement, instead of us taking questions from the audience, the candidates are going to come off the stage and greet everyone, and you would ask your questions directly to the candidates. Okay, are y'all ready to start? Okay, well, if you haven't met all of our candidates yet, this is John Berry, and you're going to go up to the stage. What we're trying to do is to keep everybody germ-free. So they don't have to touch the microphone. Well, you're going to have to do something to get it taller.
Between that, finding shirts with long enough sleeves and pants that weren't too short, yeah, story of my life. Thank you.
Yes, mine too. Okay, you're 3 minutes.
All right. Hey, I'm John Berry. First, I want to thank members of the Cooke County Republican Women for allowing us to be here tonight. I'm John Berry from Jacksboro. It's the easy way to remember it. Got my wife here with me tonight. Her name is Melanie. And we have 2 boys, Trey and Michael. They couldn't be here with us tonight, though, because they're out campaigning for me. They're helping spread the word, and I'm so fortunate to have my family involved. In fact, to give you a little bit of a background about us, we moved to Jack County about 16 years ago. And we moved to Jack County because we had the opportunity to buy part of our family heritage. So I bought the house that my great-grandparents built. And we wanted to raise our boys in that country. We wanted to keep that history alive. In fact, where we live, we still have the windmill that pumps water for the house. I've even got the mailbox that my great-grandfather set out to receive the mail. And I love it because it's bulletproof from all the mailbox baseball we get out on our road. But honestly, the biggest reason we moved out there was because we wanted our boys to grow up in rural Texas and learn rural Texas conservative values. Those are values like family, strength, and independence. And I fought hard for those values to be heard at the state GOP. I have been to the last 3 state GOP conventions. And in fact, I had the privilege to serve on the Legislative Priorities Committee at this most recent Legislative Priorities meeting. On that committee, we fought for Austin to hear our voice of what we value, conservative Texans. Things like election integrity, which we see coming into question. Monument protection, which we see it constantly being challenged. We wanted Austin to hear that, as well as, of course, the sanctity of life from birth to death. So, I've fought hard for this. I've prepared for this, and have spent quite a bit of time preparing. So again, I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. I'm John Barry, and I want to be the voice for rural Texas. Thank you.
Yes, Jason Brinkley.
And usually I don't have that problem. So most of you know me. I'm Jason Brinkley. Thank you so much for putting this on. I know it's short notice. This is a very, very accelerated timetable that we have for this election. I've been your county judge here in Cooke County for the past 6 years. Prior to that, I was a justice of the peace for just under 6 years for the southern half of Cooke County, which is where we're at now. My family's been in Cooke County for over 5 generations. We were actually, my mother's side of the family was actually some of the first to settle the ground, the very area that we are in today. So my roots run very deep in Cooke County and in rural Texas. Over the last 6 years, I've had the opportunity to be very involved as a county judge, both at the state level and at the national level, advocating for issues that matter for counties, but also for rural communities. I've served on the Rural Action Caucus at the national level, the Ag and Rural Affairs Steering Committee at the national level, and the Telecommunications and Technology Steering Committee at the national level, as well as both the Board of Directors of the Texas Association of Counties and the National Association of Counties, engaging in the core legislative group for the Texas Association of Counties, going down each session advocating for issues that impact rural communities. And one of the most important issues we have impacting us, and each one of these gentlemen, whoever is elected, this will be priority number 1, is going down there to save this district. Because of redistricting, there's a very good chance this district will significantly change, if at all, be here. And with the census data coming out in the next few weeks, it's very likely that rural Texas might lose one of its few voices it has left. And that is priority number 1, regardless of who wins, is to go down there to make sure we can continue, whether it's myself or one of these other gentlemen, make sure we continue to have a voice for rural Texas. Like I said, it's a very accelerated timetable. You don't have a lot of time to get to know the candidates, but thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Yes. Craig Carter.
My name is Craig Carter, and I am not a politician. I am a businessman that is focused on moving our rural community forward through actually practical solutions. When I first, my family moved to, my parents are here tonight, my wife Leah is here, and we purchased some property in Monte County about 18 years ago, and we started, kind of learning the rural system. I mean, we had to clear the land, we had to build the fences, stock tanks, we now raise cows and do coastal, and that was all foreign to us. I grew up in the city, Fort Worth, my whole life, and so coming out here, that kind of started drawing our family out here. And kind of once we did that, my little sister, we bought the place next door, bought another tract of land, built her a house, and our family just kind of navigated out here. And so fast forwarding, my wife Leah and I bought the old Nakona Boot Factory building, and at the time I thought I was just buying it for storage. I know the building was in jeopardy of being bulldozed, and just wanted to step in and restore that historic property. And we kind of got sucked into a kingdom assignment unbeknownst to us at the time, and we started our ministry called Hope 2911. And we just being there, I grew up in Northside Fort Worth, a lot of poverty, been around that, helped my grandpa run a food bank for Diamond Hill Baptist Church a couple days a week, and we grew up pretty poor, and we ate food from that food bank. It really helped balance the load, and And through, being exposed to that, when, I got to Nocona, I'm like, this is different. I know what Northside looks like. I know what need is, but, you have multiple generations of drug abuse, and how that affects people. And you have a lot of kids in homes that, are not healthy homes, and you start learning, the best thing they have in their life is their school teachers that are fighting for them and making sure that they're eating and putting, and just being safe and encouraging them. And so we got very involved. The last couple of years, we've helped almost about 30,000 people. We do it every other Saturday. Encourage anyone to come out and serve and help. And it's amazing what happens when you serve others. And so I'll share a little more later on just how that's transitioned. But really, that's the first step on my journey. Is strong leadership happens through serving. And when I've gone after issues that I've run into in Nocona, interesting enough, most of those issues are the top priorities. We had very poor internet and fought to get high-speed internet to Nocona. And that has been a big change, because now you can run a business well with remote learning and with telemedicine. And so it's opened the door for our community to really thrive. But thank y'all for coming out tonight, and I enjoy sharing a little more later.
Spiller?
Leave it where it is. Thank you, and I want to thank the Cooke County Republican Women for hosting this, and it's a great opportunity for y'all to get to know each of us, and I truly appreciate that. Appreciate everyone being here tonight, and those that may be watching otherwise. My name is David Spiller. I'm from Jacksboro, also from Jack County. I'm born and raised in Jacksboro. Came back after going to college, law school. Came back and I practiced law in Jacksboro. I've been practicing for 34 years. I practiced with my two sons. One of them here tonight is Reed. And I previously practiced with my dad and with my younger brother. I also own Spiller Title, which is I believe is the oldest family-owned title company in the state of Texas, started by my great-granddad in 1888. As part of my practice of law, I've served, in addition to just private practice, I've been city attorney for the city of Jacksboro for 33 years. I've been general counsel for the Jack County Hospital District since its inception in 1990, so that's 30 years. I also do a lot of mediations. I'm an advanced credential mediator, and I've mediated over 1,000 cases, many of which here in Cooke County. In fact, as an attorney, we've got a couple cases pending here in Cooke County now, so I'm familiar with Cooke County and appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have also served on the school board in Jacksboro. I'm on my 26th year as a trustee at the Jacksboro Independent School District. My family, I'm married to my wife Ginger. We've been married for 33 years. She is a teacher, has taught for 30 years, started when she was 14. And we have two sons, Mason and Reed, both attorneys, both of whom practice with us. Mason and his wife Alex, who is also a teacher. They have one child, Shepherd, and then Reed and his wife Haley, also a teacher, and they are expecting a child. And we are both members of the First Baptist Church of Jacksboro. I'm a rural conservative. I would pledge to fight for the rural conservative values of the people of this district, the principles, the beliefs that we have, and I believe that I can provide the experience, knowledge, and the accessibility to do that, and that the people of this district deserve. I believe in lower taxes, the right to life, protect the Second Amendment, to protect rural schools and hospitals, and also to provide rural access to internet to parts of the state and parts of people in our district that do not have that, and also to protect property rights and water rights. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Okay, so now we're coming to the questions now. And I have each of your names on a piece of paper. I'm just going to, when each question is started, I'm just going to grab a piece of paper and whoever's name is first. Okay, but the first question is, if elected, What committees would you ask to serve on and why? If elected, what committees would you ask to serve on and why? And the question goes to Craig Carter.
The top priority for me on being focused with what's coming up is really with property tax and with in relation to school funding. We absolutely have to think outside the box, find some new solutions. And there's so many things that we are doing in our state right now that are extremely wasteful and are not really affecting the people. It's our tax dollars that we're paying in, and about 35% of that money is being wasted. It's not impacting anyone. And then on the other side of it, there's about 50% of the properties out there, businesses, huge companies like Amazon, they don't pay property tax, they don't pay inventory tax. And the small businesses out there are, funneling that tax burden. The people are funneling that tax burden. And when you get rid of those waste and through some new, more efficient ways of focusing on that, you now can focus on the real issues of funding your schools well. And our rural schools need more funding. Our kids need more opportunities in our rural communities. And so those problems can be fixed, but they're going to have to be looked at differently, and they're going to have to be looked at making sure that everyone is paying their fair share, and there are no special interests, loopholes. I'm just not going to pay my portion, and I'm going to let someone who's retired that lives on Social Security that can't even eat quality food because they can't afford it, while big corporations are putting money in the bank, and we have to fix that.
Yes.
Thank you. And that same question goes to John Berry next.
So as rural Texans, one of the biggest battles we have is our rural counties, getting a lot of unfunded mandates shoved down on them by Austin, who Austin doesn't have the courage to figure out how to pay for it. They force it on us as rural taxpayers. One of the committees I really want to serve on is with the Criminal Justice Committee. People don't realize that our rural county hospitals, our rural county jails are the largest mental hospitals in the state. Because of an unfunded mandate called the Sandra Bland Act, county sheriffs now have to house patients with mental issues because they can't be transported to facilities that could evaluate them and facilitate them. I want to serve on a committee with the criminal justice to help correct that. And just when a sheriff's deputy pulls somebody over and then they're going to arrest them, they have a single page with 16 questions on it. If the person they're arresting answers yes to just one of those questions, and you guys, it's questions like, have you ever gained or lost weight in the last 30 days of about 5 pounds unexpectedly? Who's going to answer no to that? Another question is, were you ever told that you were slow when you're in school? So if they answer yes to any of those, now they're deemed to have a mental issue. So now they have to be held for evaluation. We have one county in this district that's had somebody for over a year waiting to be evaluated. And guess who pays for that? We do, the county taxpayers. So that's why I want to serve on that committee. We need to address that so that our counties aren't burdened with this undue responsibility. So thanks, you guys.
Thank you. So the same question now goes to David Spiller.
Great question, easy answer, redistricting. Redistricting, as Jason has talked about before, is the critical issue that affects this district for the years to come. And the reason is that we are in the minority. We are outnumbered. Rural districts are outnumbered 4 to 1, and we are losing our voice. We are at risk of losing our voice. We need a strong advocate that understands rural issues and can advocate those. And redistricting is a top priority. And the reason for that is because counties just like Cooke County can easily, with redistricting, without a voice and a seat at the table to help decide this and have some input, can be drawn into bigger districts. And you know where those are, nearby, in bigger counties. And what happens is, because you're outnumbered vote-wise, your voice gets lost. Your values, your beliefs, the things that you hold near and dear to your heart get lost, because urban issues are not the same as rural issues. What's good for Austin and Houston and Dallas is not necessarily what's good for Gainesville and Valley View and all of Cooke County. So that is critical. Now, the problem is that you know, it's kind of like having a team meeting in football or team dinner, and you're late to the meal. The chances are you're not going to get much, and that's the concern here. Is that we're late already. We're going to be late to it, and so those issues are critical. Hopefully, we can get someone there as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
First of all, I'm going to do something I didn't do the first time, and that is recognize my wife, Katie. She was shaking her head no, but I have to do that. She doesn't want that me to point her out. But David's exactly right. Redistricting is number one. And with a special election, with a potential runoff, whoever's going to be coming in is coming in late. And it's going to be hard to get on that committee. But if at all possible, that should be number one. Number two, being a rural district that has a lot of agriculture committee should be the second biggest, because this is a rural district. It is an agricultural centric district. And the number three one is, for me, coming from county government, is county affairs. Because I understand, I think we have a disconnect happening in Austin concerning issues of local government and of county government. And I think it's more, you have to have a diverse group of individuals to make up a legislature. You have to have individuals from all sorts of backgrounds to have a knowledge of how that impacts those backgrounds or impacts those particular fields. And I think that I would bring that experience of county government to Austin to hopefully have an impact, and I think county affairs is one of the committees that could happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is, are you familiar with the challenges rural hospitals face, and do you have ideas for the solution? And the first person to answer that is David Spiller.
Yes. Yes, as I stated earlier, I have been general counsel to the Jackson County Hospital District for 30 years. I understand on a daily basis and deal with issues daily with our hospital district. And we started off with a few years ago, we went from a 1956 constructed Hillburton hospital that had one physician, and we were not going to pass our Medicare inspection the next year. We were able to build a new state-of-the-art hospital facility. We're now doing OB. We're about to add orthopedics. We're doing all sorts of things. We have expanded from one rural health clinic to 4 rural health clinics in 4 counties. And we've also been creative as far as the UPL program with nursing homes. We started off, we were one of the pilot hospital districts to do that, we have the papers on 3 nursing homes. Originally, when they started off, Parkland Hospital said, why would we do that? There's no, why in the world would we do that? Parkland Hospital now has 30 of them. So we've been on the cutting edge, on the forefront of, and you have to be creative with hospitals and rural health cares. I participate in TORCH, Texas Organization of Rural and Community Hospitals, with THA, Texas Hospital Association. I understand firsthand there are many hospital closures all around us. And I know full well the struggles of hospital districts in this area, and I have many ways to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. And that same question goes next to John Berry.
When you think about rural health care, again, with us being rural, a lot of it has to do with access. In the state of Texas, we have 25 counties that don't even have a primary care physician. As I've talked to hospital CEOs around the district, I spoke with one in Wheeler the other day. She almost started crying as she was telling me how she has patients who sit for hours waiting just to have an x-ray view. We have such a disconnect with rural hospitals that people aren't addressing it, and they're not willing to face the fact that we need to look at another way to deliver rural medicine. It takes us back to rural broadband, in all honesty, and we've all talked about it. But rural broadband is a big factor of that. As I've talked to chief nurse practitioners, one solution that we could look at is establishing small clinics with simply nurses and PAs, and we could telemed in specialists. But the other problem with rural healthcare is recruiting people to these facilities. We all know how great it is to live in a small town, but a lot of times it's our kids who move away, and they don't necessarily want to come back. The state of Texas has a program where they repay the loans for doctors, but they don't have that same program for nurses. And who spends most of the time with the patients? Doctors spend 5 minutes. The nurses spend 12 hours. We need to figure out a way to help nurses as well, because we can have nurses and PAs in these clinics to help take care of these folks in these rural areas. That would make a significant difference. I think that's a great solution we should look at.
Thank you. And the next person who gets that question is Craig Carter.
When we first moved to Nakona, my wife Leah was really sick, and we went to the hospital. And I've never experienced being around Dallas-Fort Worth. You have a choice of lots of amazing hospitals, and our first experience there was just astronomical. Of this is so different. It's underfunded. It's understaffed. We can't really help you. And, and I really watched her for a couple days being there of you start questioning, is this person actually going to make it here, to the point of, we need to get out of this hospital. We need to go to a different hospital that have different doctors. And, and my younger sister, she had an issue in childbirth and had to have her child care flighted to Cooke's and almost lost one of her kids. And, and so this is something that's near and dear to our family. It needs to be fixed, and the way you fix these things is you can pull in experts that understand how to run a perfect hospital and how you staff it, but that's not the issue. The issue comes back to funding. And so, my approach to everything is go out and make sure that everyone is paying their fair share in Texas, and then you have a surplus of funds. And when you have a surplus of funds, you can reallocate them to make sure that our hospitals are funded, that they're staffed well, and that we can meet the need of those communities. And, Drew Springer and I sat and talked this last week about this, and it's not fair to a hospital that you have 100,000 cars going by a day and people stop and go to that hospital, but that hospital is so underfunded by the community, and we need to really fix those areas and go after funding correctly.
Thank you. And Jason?
In the state of Texas in the past about 5 or so years, there's been a dozen hospitals go under. We have lost a dozen hospitals in Texas, and all those are in rural Texas. In House District 68, there is, I think, 6 counties that do not have a physician. So this is a serious issue for rural Texas. And I think some of the ideas thrown out here are exactly what you have to do, and that is, goes back to adequate rural broadband. I was talking to a gentleman just the other day in Floyd, Ada, and he was talking about being able to access his doctor in Dallas, because they only come out to Lubbock maybe once a month, but he needs that care more often. So it's about utilizing broadband internet when you can. It's about bringing in and working with your medical universities, whether that's Texas Tech or UT or UT Southwestern, and coming up with a partnership to have young, recently graduated or graduating healthcare professionals, whether that's nurses, doctors, or otherwise, come into those communities to help serve those communities as part of their learning experience, so that they have some real-world experience before they probably will go off someplace else, but potentially could settle in that community. So, I mean, it is a multifaceted approach, but it's something that we have to address for rural Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is, do you think the 3.5% tax cap on cities, states, and counties was right? And will you defend it? And the first person for that is Craig Carter.
I absolutely will defend the tax cap. In fact, going after this issue is something I've been spending a lot of time researching and studying on how to find solutions. And I think across the board, when everyone starts paying their fair share, funding goes up, and the people carrying the load is probably going to go down by at least 50%. And a lot of people are like, that can't be done, it doesn't exist. But when you dive deep into where you follow the money trail, when you see what's going on the election and everything that just happened in Georgia, you spend $500 million. Well, sadly, that's our money that is somehow funneled into different PACs and different groups. And when you follow the money, you'd be amazed at how much surplus we have in the state of Texas that's going into people that are not working hard for it. It's going into their hands, and it's being squandered. And when you put some accountability on that, you don't have a funding issue. And then you can lower what everyone's paying, and magically you can start fixing rural hospitals. You can start fixing your schools. So every approach I will go will be going after following the funds, on fighting corruption, and going after putting that money back into our rural systems and making sure that we have the strength that's needed to, move our economy forward and create jobs and new opportunity.
Thank you. And the next person to answer that is Jason Brinkley. He has a brother, and so a lot of people will say the brother's name first and then his.
It happens in a lot of families. So I actually was in Austin last session advocating against this. And the reason why is because it's misguided. A 3.5% cap doesn't solve any problems that creates it. That is solving a symptom of the problem. The problem is, and a lot of times is, you have unfunded mandates being pushed down from the state of Texas on local government. And I actually was part of the governor, created a task force of 6 county judges and 6 commissioners that met before session to discuss this very bill, this SB2. I was part of that. And I wrote a multi-page paper, about an 8 or 10-page paper, outlining how this was misguided. Because I don't know if anybody's looked at your tax bill, it did not go down. And that didn't go down because 50% of your tax bill or more is because of school funding. It's not because of the caps that are the stuff that's put on it by counties or cities. It's school funding. And you got to address school funding, number one. But on counties and cities, you got to not have unfunded mandates and your non-discretionary cost drivers, such as indigent health, indigent defense, and jail healthcare costs are huge cost drivers that just here in Cooke County, we've seen approximately a 200% increase in those costs over the past 8 years. So if we don't address those, and that has to be addressed at the state level, then we're not solving the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next person for that is John Berry.
I had the privilege to serve as county commissioner for a short period of time. And when I sat as county commissioner and saw the difficulties that we have on funding a small rural county, one of the issues that was addressed was decrease in values when we rely on mineral rights. In Jack County, we had a $12 million decrease in our appraised values. At 3.5% cap, put a real strain on funding that county. But what SB2 did allow is that if commissioners are going to go above that 3.5% cap, the voters have a chance to voice their opinion. And one thing that they did do is they did a carve-out for small counties called a de minimis rule. It allows counties to raise an additional $500 above that no-vote limit. But I think that $500 is an arbitrary number. And I think that needs to be readdressed. I think we do need to maintain that 3.5% cap because I think we all feel like we pay enough in property taxes, especially in rural Texas when we rely on the land itself to generate our revenue. But I think what we need to readdress is how the de minimis rule is applied so that rural counties can address how to fund other issues when they see a decrease in the appraised values around the land, especially folks who rely on wind generators. And when wind generators, when they come off of vacant, you see them come from a $100 million value to a $15 million value. We've got to figure out a way to address that in rural Texas. So, thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. The problem with the current property tax system that we have in Texas can't be addressed and completely explained in a minute and a half. But to specifically answer your question, let me tell you what I think. I'm a firm believer in cutting taxes and doing everything that we can. And a tax takes many shapes, forms. There are many things that are taxed, but specifically here, what I'm looking at is that these, I believe in, they have good intentions to cut taxes, and that's great. But the problem is that those folks don't understand that local counties, cities, hospital districts, and schools rely on property taxes. And when I don't like the idea of Washington dictating to us what we can do here in Texas, and I don't really like the idea of Austin doing the same thing. Folks in Austin complain about Washington, D.C., and yet they do the same thing to us. And to me, government that works locally works best. It works most efficient. The folks that need to be able to determine what's best for Cooke County are the folks in Cooke County. And I think those decisions ultimately need to be made by the folks that are local leaders in Cooke County. So I don't like the idea, I understand the concept, but I don't like the idea of Washington dictating to Cooke County what they can do and what they can't do with their tax rate. Do I understand the concept of reducing it? Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question is, do you support monument protection legislation that would prevent statues from being removed or destroyed? And the first person for that question is Jason Brinkley.
So we had this issue come up here in Cooke County, as I'm sure everybody in the room is aware of, and the discussion came to Commissioner's Court. My position has been, and it remains to this day, is if there is an avenue to let voters decide on cultural issues like that, then you should let voters decide on cultural issues like that. Because otherwise you're never really putting that issue to bed. You're always going to have, I've continued to get emails even to this day on that particular issue, because it hasn't been put to bed. The best way to do that is to let the voters decide what is the cultural preference of that community and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person to answer that same question is Craig Carter.
So my commitment to history is really rooted in my education, and we've traveled the country and gone to almost every museum and learned about our founding fathers and what they fought for. And it's just so sad to me to see people trying to tear down our history, where we've come from. And even the property in Nakona, that property was abandoned and being jeopardized and being bulldozed. And it's a historic property that was the lifeline of that community at one point, employing 500 people. And, I'm the type of person that'll step in and not just say I want to defend historic properties, but put my money behind it, saying I want to defend it, when everyone else says that's a bad, why waste your time? And so moving forward on this, I absolutely am, against letting anyone tear down a statue, because at some point in time, someone was very passionate about it. It's part of our history. We need to defend that so that the next generation can experience that. And I think it's very dangerous the way our society is going right now, is to let us go with whatever whim social media or the people's voice that is not actually our voice, that can get everyone riled up to believe that what we want to do is tear that down, because 2 generations from now, that generation might actually care about that statue. And so we need to defend our history and stand behind monuments like the Alamo, and make sure that we keep those for the next 100 years.
Thank you. And that same question goes to David.
We have a problem in our country. We have people that don't like where we are, and they want to change history. They want to rewrite history. They want to treat it as if certain things did not happen. We live in the greatest country in the world. Was it perfect? Probably not. We know it wasn't. Were there problems? Sure. Were there struggles? Yes. But history is history. And monuments we don't need to erase our history. Again, I think it comes down to local control. I don't like the idea, again, necessarily of someone dictating to you from Washington, D.C. Would you like something, if Washington, D.C. dictated to you that you couldn't have a statue here? No. And I don't want Austin to either. The problem is that we are letting certain people control us and dictate to us what we can do with our history and with our statues and with any monuments or with anything that we have. We have the right to make a decision for ourselves rather than someone make it for us.
Thank you. And then John?
So when you talk about monuments, I think a lot of people forget that a monument is not a celebration. It's a marker. It's to mark a moment in time. That monument stands there to remind us of what happened. Sometimes history's sloppy. Sometimes it's fantastic. But that monument marks that significant feature in time. Monument defending is one of the 8 priorities of this Republican Party that we are all members of. We all agree as a party that this is something that we feel is important and is worth defending. We have people coming after the cenotaph in San Antonio. We have people coming after Confederate statues, Confederate monuments. But we're not celebrating what some of the Confederacy did, but that is a part of our history. Yet those same people can have a statue of Lenin, and Lenin is known to have killed more people than what died in the Civil War. So we need to remember that, and we need to remember that those monuments are not a celebration, it's a mark in history, and we should defend those monuments. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question is, do you support elimination of the Texas property tax? If your answer is yes, what do you propose to replace the Texas property tax? And the first person for that is Craig Carter.
Drew Springer and I spent quite a bit of time, almost 3 hours a day, discussing mainly this issue. And obviously there's a lot of different ways to go about it, and so I'm not really going to get off into all those things, but I absolutely want to see it reduced 50% at the minimum. We both kind of agree the school side of it is the issue that we need to make sure that our schools are becoming stronger with more funds and not pulling that back. And when you start looking at some of the issues on making sure that all these corporations and everyone are paying their fair share, there's really not a shortfall here. The issue is too many people have too much money to find loopholes to not pay their portion. And in my food bank, I would say half the people that come through are on limited Social Security. They struggle to buy food, they struggle to pay their electric bill, and they might be a widow, and they're left with the house and their property tax. It is unfair to them to be paying this absorbent property tax when there are local leadership in that community that does not pay their fair share. They know how to get around it. They know how to make sure, and they push that burden on an 82-year-old widowed woman. And that's an example that happens around Nakona, but on a big scale, when you get the big companies in Texas, and the cool thing is everyone's coming to Texas and they pay their fair share, we have tremendous surplus, and then that lessens the load. And like I say, I think it could be reduced at least 50%, if not eliminated.
Thank you. So the same question next goes to John Berry.
We all know property tax is a contentious issue. The state is not going to have an income tax. That is not on the table. That will never happen. When property tax was started, property ownership was the primary source of revenue in the state. The state has grown and industry has changed. Property tax definitely needs to be continued to be reevaluated. 60% of all property taxes goes to the schools. So we have to be careful when we start talking about adjusting property taxes that we don't neglect our schools. But we do need to look at perhaps other ways to fund our economy. We have 47% of this population that does not pay a property tax. Now you're going to say, yes, but their landlord does, and that's true. That means that we're placing a higher and higher concentration of burden on a smaller and smaller amount of people, and that's not fair. We can tax things like bottled water. It's considered a luxury. When you buy a small bag of chips, that's taxed. When you buy a large bag of chips, that's not. We've got some inconsistencies in the taxing system based on consumption taxes that perhaps we could look at exploring and reduce some of the burden that comes from property tax ownership.
Thank you. The same question now goes to David Spiller.
We have some inequities in our Texas property tax system. We need to make sure, first of all, that seniors are taken care of with our current system. We need to make sure that farms and ag use exemptions stay in place, otherwise so people aren't at risk. But the very idea, and what's been discussed already, is that there are people that aren't paying any taxes. And the greater burden, obviously, is on those that aren't. I would consider, you can't very well eliminate the property tax system without replacing it with something else, whether it be a consumption tax or whether it's anything else, that obviously not an income tax, but something else as far as consumption where everyone pays a fair share. I haven't seen a plan that addresses all the needs that it needs to, but if I see it, I'll take a look at it. We consider it. But the problem is that local governments rely on property taxes. Your counties rely on property tax for their revenue. Your cities do. The schools do. The hospital districts do. If you eliminate the property tax without something else that's going to fund it, then they can't operate. If you do something else, Then you get back into the problem of Austin determines what revenue that you get and what you can raise, and which limits what you can determine on a local basis. So there are some inequities, and including those where the state property tax board comes down and tells your local appraisal district, oh, by the way, your values aren't high enough, you need to raise your values. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
So there's two primary forms of taxation out there. There's a sales tax and a property tax. And obviously, as everybody said earlier, we're not going to consider an income tax. That has already been handled during the constitutional amendments last time around. But it's a little bit like a bicycle. So if any one wheel gets too big, you lose a little stability and you can't propel yourself forward. So right now, the property taxes for most people have gotten too big. We need to rebalance that somehow, whether that's through expanding and revising our property tax system, whether that's through putting additional dollars in, or putting an additional penny or so into sales tax. There needs to be other options, because right now that front tire that is the property tax is too big for most people in most areas. We need to rebalance that and take a look at either expanding the base or addressing by increasing sales tax. And as was pointed out earlier, the issue with property tax, the biggest issue with property tax is schools. And one of the biggest problems with schools is whenever your appraisal district sets your values, however, they have to be within 10% of what the state says they have to be, or they take a penalty. So when Austin says, hey, we're going to try to fix property tax, what they're really doing is not, they have the ability to fix it by eliminating that requirement and letting more of those local discretionary issues be solved at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question is, what state budget shortfalls do you see, and how do you propose funding be handled in light of the pandemic and the resulting economic difficulties? The first one is John Berry.
I'm in a financial planning business, so I go straight to numbers on everything every time. And budgets is one thing that we as citizens tend to fall short. But budgets are someplace we can't fall short as a state government. So our total budget last year was $251 billion. So right now we're looking at, early estimates were a $4.6 billion shortfall. Glenn Hagar gave an indication last week that it's probably not going to be that much. So if we're 4 to 4.6 billion short, you're talking about 1 to 1.8%. 1 to 1.8%. That's a much more manageable number than $4 billion. We haven't had reductions in our government spending since 2011. 10 years that our government has been able to grow unchecked. And we all know that there's government agencies out there that can tend to get bloated. And that may be one of the first places we should look. But there's also frivolous tax exemptions that we have that are not necessary. We offer a tax exemption for people to make movies here. But that same tax exemption also applies to companies that create gaming and virtual reality. Some of the highest paying jobs in the country, just some of the most profitable corporations in the world. And we're giving them a tax exemption to be here. We could benefit from that additional revenue. So I think there's areas that we can tweak without touching, cannot touch education, transportation. We need, those are sacred, but there are areas where we can trim. So thank you.
Thank you. And the same question goes to David Spiller.
The last session, schools were funded better than they had been, and there were some issues involved with that. What schools are concerned about now is that cutting funding. Everything is uncertain. We don't really know where we're going to go. We don't know what's going to happen at the state level, and we need to protect the funding for the schools because we're already under a system where the state is required under our Constitution to sufficiently and equitably fund public education. That's not really happening. You're funding it here locally. Just because you fund it and through Robin Hood it gets sent to Austin and comes back to you does not mean that the state is funding it. It means that you're funding it. So there's concern out there with that. There's concern with healthcare. Mental health has been discussed. All of those things take money. It's a challenge. I don't know what we as the state or as the legislature is going to do. we just don't know. But I do know, as has been addressed, there's plenty of waste, fraud, and abuse in our state spending, and I think all of that needs to be examined. There's too much bureaucracy. We get too much bureaucracy in Washington. Guess what? We've got too much bureaucracy in Austin, and we need to look at that, cut the fat, and let's operate a little leaner than we have in recent years, and probably than we ever have.
Thank you. And the next person is Craig Carter.
The worst thing for politicians and people in Austin is someone like me that can't be bought, and I've spent my career on finding what the issues are. And when we come to this, coming through COVID, I'm so aware of the challenges that are happening. If we're not careful with our small business, the reason we need a 50% property tax, inventory tax reduction now, 50% of our small businesses will not be with us in another 6 months. And there's so much change happening that we have to defend those people that have worked hard to grow our economy, and we have to lean and put the pressure back on the companies that are not paying their fair share. And so when you go after, let's cut this, cut that, look at the whole budget, there's some waste here, waste there, that's not the issue. The issue is when you dive into just the property tax and you dive into the companies that are not paying anything and the people that are not paying property tax, you go through just that system and you fix your hospitals, you fix your schools, you fix your property tax, and immediately you have real solutions. And my whole journey in Austin will be devoted to putting together the right team that is going after this every day and is pushing the issue, and not just going, well, we don't know what to do. When times are tough and you're squeezed, that's when you rise to the occasion, you find solutions, and you move forward and cut the waste off. And you end a lot of corruption when you start cutting funding off. And that's going to be one of my top assignments.
Thank you. And Jason Brinkley.
So one of the toughest issues coming into this next session will be balancing the budget. I was on several of the calls with Glenn Hager as county judge, and listening to the nightmare scenario that was playing out earlier in the year of significant budget shortfalls. Luckily, it doesn't look like that's going to quite be the case, but there still is going to be a budget shortfall that has to be made up. I think in light of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of things. We've seen a lot of terrible. Let's not try to paint a rosy picture there. However, we've seen a lot of things that we may be able to do without. We've seen a lot of telework, commuting, things like that are happening. And a lot of these offices slimmed down to do the bare essentials. Some of them did it well, some of them didn't. I think we can look at that first and see what offices are being able to function very well with limited staff in office now during COVID, and look there as ways to cut. We also do have access to the rainy day fund if we need it, and to me it's raining out there, guys. I don't know about anybody else, but I think you look at cutting common sense areas first, and then if you need to backfill any of that with the rainy day fund, you can do it. But it most certainly will be a very important issue this session.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes 6 questions. We've got 3 more for you. The next question is, what are your top 3 priorities, and how would you hold on, it may have gotten typed wrong. What are your top 3 priorities, and how do you see changes that need to be made to those? And then beside it, we've got, why are you, why are you in this race? What are your personal top 3 priorities for being in the race? Okay, and that question goes to John Berry.
So I've got 2 top 3s?
Well, it says, what are your top 3 priorities, and how would you see changes made to those?
Let me just stick with the top 3 priorities.
Changes made to those.
So my top 3 priorities, first is election integrity. We have spent the last 4 years hearing how we had a president who didn't win, Now we have another presidential election where things are being called into question. We have to reinforce and guarantee our election integrity in this state. We have to make it a felony for any violations of those. You have to have an ID to check into a hotel. You have to have a picture ID to open a checking account. But you don't have to have a picture ID to vote to do our most essential American right. So we need to look at other ways to ensure election integrity. Second is rural broadband. You know, here in Cooke County, you guys have been blessed to have access to fiber. Where I live out in Jack County, I got one bar on cellular, and that's it. In this district, the further west you go, the worse and worse the internet coverage is. And that rural broadband internet is the key to economic growth for us in Texas. We've heard about people coming out here and telecommuting and working. We need to bring them out and have them the ability to stay. And that would allow expansion. That leads us right to my third, rural health care. Because rural health care ties in beautifully with rural broadband. When we have that access in the healthcare system, we can spread healthcare access to more of our citizens. So those are the three that I would address and how I would address them.
Thank you. The next person is Jason Brinkley.
So is it 3 and 3, or do I just...
So it's actually, what are your top 3 priorities, and how would you see changes made to those 3 priorities?
3 priorities, okay.
Motivation.
All right, so the first priority, and John hit on it, and I think you're going to hear a broken record here, is rural broadband. And we do have issues with rural broadband here in Cooke County. It's actually the number 2 issue I heard as county judge, at least prior to 2020. Number 1 being roads, and we've got a couple excellent commissioners here that can take care of that. But the number 2 is rural broadband, and that's something, especially in your very small areas, that and even here, it's one of the first questions somebody asks when moving there, and it's one of the first reasons why a lot of people move away, especially your young families. And you've got to have quality rural broadband, and you've seen it highlighted through COVID on telehealth and telecommuting and simply entertainment. The second one is local decision making. I think we need to push as many decisions down to the local level, whether that's your city councils, whether that's your school boards, whether that's your commissioners' courts, as possible. I still believe that government closest to the people governs best, and we got to get back to that. We're the ones that see them, whether we're on the school boards or our commissioners' courts. We're the ones that see them at the gas station. We're the ones that see them at the ball games. They let us know when we make the wrong decision, or even when we have, on occasion, make the right decision. So we hear it loudest, and I think that's the voice closest to the people. And the third one is rural health care, because if you go out to, I was in Post a little bit earlier today, and there a lot of, I'm already out of time, but that's...
You'll have 3 minutes closing. Okay, the next person that gets that question is Craig Carter.
The top priority for me is defending people that don't have a voice and defending the lives of our unborn. Behind that, property tax is something that I will absolutely go after fighting, which is tied to with our schools and funding our schools. And that issue, really how you overcome that issue is not cutting anything. You're creating new revenue streams through new job creations. You're going after accountability and ending some of the corruption going on. And you're really focused on those issues. And lastly, when we come to broadband, having fought that battle in Nakona, the real quick story on that, we had about 50 pairs of fiber going through my property headed to Wichita Falls, and AT&T, Verizon, everyone had lines in there, but nobody could access it because someone had made a bad deal with Windstream, and that our community was cut off from using that. And I fought that for almost 2 years to then go outside the box and get Nortex involved to bring fiber to Nakona. And when you fast forward with some of the things that just happened, because I fought that battle, Nakona did really well through COVID because we had high-speed internet. And there's some great things that, as a business person with Elon Musk, some things that are coming out that we as Texans should be able to negotiate an amazing contract to cover broadband and cell service throughout Texas very easily without us investing much money. And we need to be proactive on business people going and making that thing happen so that we can all have high-speed internet.
Thank you. And David Spiller.
Number one, redistricting. We've already talked about that. Clearly, that's the number one issue facing this district. Number two, local control. We've talked about that. Several of us have talked about that. Critical, and I'm a firm believer in local control. Number three is the broadband. We've talked about that. That is, and I have also talked to, as a solution, talked to wireless internet service providers and others about what to do, how to fix it, how to address it. I went to the southern part of the western part of this district. It's a big district. Spoke in 10 counties the other day. Got to visit with some good folks, and there are 3 counties through there that have no wireless internet problems. They're great. They got whatever they need. That's not the case with everyone else. And when kids have to go because of the pandemic, they are forced to, it's an exacerbated problem. It's large crime. And when kids have to go to Dairy Queen just to get internet to do their homework, that's not fun. And I said, we've got to do something. And I've talked to some people with some possible solutions. So those are 3. I've got 30 seconds, and I'm going to throw one more. The other is that we haven't really talked about tonight is protecting property rights and protecting water rights. And there's some inequities in our system with eminent domain, and I have handled many eminent domain cases, probably about 20 of them, 2,200 of them. I've represented landowners, and I understand the problems, I understand the inequities, I understand the appraisal process. So we need to do that with property and with water. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is, do you support banning taxpayer-funded lobbying from counties, cities, and schools? And if not, why? And Jason Brinkley gets that question.
So a lot of people make taxpayer-funded lobbying sound like the big bad wolf, and it's really not. A lot of our organizations that as commissioners or as teachers or as city council members that we're members of are in Austin advocating on behalf of counties. And really, if you cut off taxpayer-funded lobbyists, what you're really doing is cutting off another avenue for a voice for rural Texas. And I point out an example of that is in DeWitt County, a county that's been hit hard by oil and gas industry or has had the benefits and the curses. They actually had, through some lobbying efforts, were able to pull more dollars back to the local level to improve a lot of their infrastructure. Same thing in Johnson County and Victoria County had some problems with sludge being basically just thrown out onto farmland. They weren't getting a whole lot from their representative as way as help, but they were able to use some taxpayer-funded lobbying through their mechanisms to help eliminate those problems in those communities. Really, it's about having an avenue for a voice. This issue really is meant to fix a problem that's happening in Harris County, in which you have a paid staff of dozens that are advocating in Austin, not in rural Texas, where we're really spending pennies, if even that, on lobbying efforts in each county. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is David Spiller.
Okay, I understand the idea of using taxpayer dollars for lobbying. What happens here locally when you have the cities pay through their dues through Texas Municipal League, counties pay it through Texas Association of Counties, hospitals may pay it through THA or Torch, and you have schools pay it through TASB or through some other advocacy group. I get it. We're using taxpayer dollars and the idea of lobbying. What the people that are doing for these groups is not really lobbying. They're not taking people out and whining and dining them and doing things like that. The whole reason this problem came about had to do with, and most people on this stage understand this, has to do with some abuses that were done in Harris County. Again, you can fix the problem without affecting us. The issue here is what they're trying to do doesn't affect the bigger cities. They got plenty of money, or counties or whatever. They got plenty of money to do whatever they want with lobbying. We don't. It's another way that we lose our voice. We pay dues to some of these organizations, and a very small portion goes to someone that all they're doing is keeping us informed about local issues, bills coming out, what's happening. They're not, and then they go talk to those folks. Maybe it's the definition, we change the definition of what a lobbyist is. But what it is, it's an effort for them to silence your voice. And the problem is that the folks in this room don't have time, not everyone has time, to take off, go to Austin, and do all that. And the irony is, if you think that the state of Texas isn't paying millions of dollars for their own lobbyists to Washington, D.C., you're wrong.
Thank you. Craig Carter.
When we look at the election cycle that just happened and the amount of money that's been spent and the amount of fraud, the amount of all this, it all comes back to money. And when you follow the money and you follow who's donating to which candidates, where these, in some of these races, $500 million comes in, and it is unbelievable how much money comes through. And so when it comes to tax-based lobbying, I believe that our money is working against us, and I believe that money's being siphoned off in bills, and you have 1,000-page bills that money's being siphoned in back into these groups, and there's so much corruption on it that the best way to fix something that's that out of control is you have to cut it off, and you have to swing too far the other direction to end the money trail and how it's coming back into the system, and then the people have a voice again. The reason in this rural community we don't have a voice is because we don't have enough taxpayer lobbying money to pay huge lobbying groups to go represent the rural community. When you cut it off, our voice will be just as strong as Dallas-Fort Worth's voice. And so it's really important that you cut off all this corruption. And I understand that there's some great groups that, they go down there and they advocate and they care about our communities and they're involved. But guess what? Those people are going to be just as involved by cutting that money off, and we the people will regain our voice and put support behind people that we want representing us in Austin.
Thank you. And John Barry?
So we talked about taxes. Nobody loves paying taxes. When I pay my taxes to my school district, I expect it to go to my school district. I expect it to go to my kids. In the session for 2019, there were over $2 million of taxpayer money that was spent on public school lobbying. So here's the deal. I spoke with Mays Middleton, who's one of the authors of the bill, and I was fortunate enough to earn his endorsement. Taxpayer-funded lobbying is going after registered lobbyists. The reason why rural Texas is getting lost is because rural Texas cannot afford the high-powered lobbyists that Collin County can, that Dallas County can, that Travis County can. So what we need to do is ban those registered lobbyists, not banning organizations, not banning associations, just registered lobbyists. And what does a lobbyist do? A lobbyist will go to the office of the representative and tell the representative what's best for whoever's paying him. And I'm sorry, some guy who offices in Austin is not going to know what's best for Cooke County. Probably couldn't even pick it out on a map. And yet, he's going to take your tax dollars and go to Austin and say what's best for you? No. We need to ban taxpayer-funded lobbyists because our jobs as representatives is to hear you directly. We all have cell phones. You can reach us on our cell phones. We all have our staff out in the district as well as in Austin. You can reach us on that. That's our job, is to be your advocate, not a lobbyist.
Okay, and the last question is, redistricting is taking place during the next legislative session. Being the lowest in seniority, HD-68 will need the help of the Speaker's team to keep from being eliminated. How do you plan to build relationships to ensure the majority of HD-68 stays together? That goes to Jason Brinkley.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Because whoever wins this election is basically going to get the broom closet in the basement as their office. So you're coming in, as we said earlier, basically a month behind on a good day of when session starts. So whoever gets elected, the first thing they need to do is run down to Austin and start making friends with Phil King, who's going to most likely be chairing the committee on redistricting is probably number one. The speaker is probably on that list too, to try to save this district. This district will change. There is no doubt about it, because it's going to have to gain probably around 30 or 40,000 people, depending upon what the census numbers show. And that means the panhandle districts are going to have to gain the same. And really the only place they can do it from is to take it from this district. So this district's going to change significantly. The goal should be to keep it a rural district. It'll take some work, and it'll take a lot of handshaking and a lot of friendships that have to be made in Austin to make that happen. But that ultimately should be the goal, is to maintain some semblance of a rural district for rural Texas during this next legislative session. Thanks.
Thank you. And the next person is David Spiller.
Redistricting, number one issue, we've talked about that, and here's the issue. The last census data that they did for this district, each of these districts throughout the state, the last time had about 160,500 people. We're now looking at the district population because of the growth, most of it up and down the I-35 corridor, is going to be, each of these districts is going to be 190,000, roughly. We don't know for sure yet, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. So it is going to change, something's going to change. It is critical that we try to maintain our rural identity and our rural values and beliefs and things that we know to be true. We need an effective advocate to do that, because the question, I think, was how would you address it? As an attorney, I advocate in court every day, not every day, especially lately it's been Zoom court instead of in court, but that's what I do every day. So there's a time to advocate and there's time to push hard. There's a time to try to work with people. I do that daily, and I do that through mediations to try to find common ground and find a compromise where we get something out of it. They get what they want, but we get what's important to us. And I think it is going to take someone that has that skill set and someone with that experience to get that done. It's not going to be easy, and like I say, we're coming in late to the party. So it's very important that we have someone there, whoever it is out of this group, someone there that can advocate and get us what we need and maintain, our rural roots. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next person is Craig Carter.
So I believe redistricting is a huge issue, but I actually think there's several issues that are equally as important. As long as you go after some different issues, like we talked about taxpayer lobbying, and you level the playing field where the people have a voice, it's not as important when all of a sudden Cooke County has as big of a voice as Tarrant County, and if you level that playing field, it's not as complicated of an issue of where the district is. And I believe there's a lot of people working hard on this issue that I absolutely believe they're going to defend the rural sections, and I know that it's going to be different and it's going to change, but we absolutely have to go after the bigger issue of the corruption and cutting off the money and making sure that our voice is heard. And when that happens, being in Cooke versus being in Tarrant, we should still have the same representation. And we need to make sure that that's the top priority, to make sure that our voice is being heard.
Thank you. John Berry?
This is an issue I've already been working on. I testified before the House Redistricting Committee this summer. Do you guys realize all the land west of I-35, all that land, that's only 13% of the state's population. We're getting lost because of the size of our area. Redistricting is key to Texas staying red. The Democrats spent $60 million in this state to turn it blue, and we fought it off, but it's not over. We have to maintain Texas red, and redistricting is what's going to do it. Now, we have to do it through relationships. I'm fortunate enough to have already been sitting and visiting with several representatives, trying to build those relationships and those coalitions now. Because it's going to be those coalitions that will help us fight in Austin and maintain Texas and maintain this district as red. And that's why redistricting is so important, and that's why we have to work to maintain the voice of rural Texas.
Thank you. So before the closing statements, I want to let everyone know that there are actually 5 candidates for this race, but the 5th is a Democrat. Obviously, I'm not going to invite a Democrat to a Republican Party event, but that does cause us a problem, in that if all the Democrats vote for their candidate and our vote gets divided into 4 votes, the Democrat would win. So it's really important that we get out the vote. We've got to get large numbers of votes to overcome all of their votes going to one person. Okay, so we're going to do the closing statements, and we're going to do them in the opposite order of how we did introductions. So it will be David Spiller. Yes.
Again, thank y'all. Thank Cooke County Republican Women's Group. I appreciate it very much. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Many of you don't know me. And those that don't know me, you will get to know me. And what you need to know about me is that you can count on me. You need to know that I will work hard if elected. I will work hard to represent Cooke County. I will work hard to protect those rural conservative values that I stand for and that you stand for. You need to know that if you need to call me or talk to me or meet with me, you will be able to do that, and I will hear you, and I will be a part of your community, and I will work hard for you. You know, life is built on relationships. My life is built on relationships. And I value very much those relationships. And if I have a relationship with you, you can count on me. I will be there for you. I will communicate with you. I will hear your concerns. I will meet with you. You can call me on my phone. My cell phone is on my card. My clients call me. You can call me. I will be accessible to you. I will be here. And I will look out for you and the people of this district. And you need to know that, because I'm not from Cooke County, and so you're thinking, who is this guy, and do I put my trust in him? This is a critical time for us here in Cooke County. Can I trust this guy? Is he our guy? Can he get it done? I believe I can. And I believe I have the experience. The experience may sound like I'm old. Maybe I am. But I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the background, and I have the commitment. And I will be accessible to you if given that opportunity. And once again, I want to thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you. Craig Carter?
I want to let everyone in this room know that, I am walking, coming out of COVID with y'all. My 2 oldest kids go to Calsburg ISD here in Cooke County. We are walking that journey of them working, doing school from home, and then having challenges with the system, and then going back to school, one kid, and then both kids, and then someone gets COVID, and then going back home, and then the challenges of what the teachers are facing, what our schools are facing, what our police departments are facing, and all of it comes back to economics. So, I want to talk about how we make Cooke County as a staple of moving forward and for HD-68 and with redistricting, and make sure that, I'm not just investing in supporting in Austin, but I have skin in the game in this area to know what's going on. I understand what's happening with our jobs, having 12 old boot factory stores scattered around Dallas-Fort Worth and one in Oklahoma City. I understand the challenges of being on the front lines. I understand, being responsible for, almost 100 people. I understand the manufacturing side of Nakona Ball Gloves, having 50 people in the building making gloves, and with COVID, and the factory gets shut down and then reopens. I understand with Nakona Beer and Nakona Coffee, the manufacturing side there and the challenge that are facing us. So collectively, I have boots on the ground literally in the state. I understand what's going on. I'm walking it out with y'all. I'm feeling the pain, and so I'm someone that's very activated by, when I feel pain, I go find a solution. And the solutions come back to, I want to make sure that our police departments are so well funded that running any drugs in our community is a terrible idea, and they go somewhere else to do it. Because when you start giving people the tools they need to do their job, and our first responders and our teachers and our schools, and then you go after that side, you fix almost every issue in our district. And the fact that I have a proven track record of doing that, and doing that in Nakona, where when I come there, everyone's like, you cannot change anything. We're going to control you. We'll run you out of town if we need to. We'll do anything we need to shut you down. And to be able to stand for 4 years and run a food bank and feed people that are in need, and to be able to create those new jobs, and to be able to go after high-speed internet, to getting the power grid upgraded because my building caught on fire at one point, and behind the scenes pushing all those things that when we come into something like COVID, Nocona has done very well through that, and most people are not aware of how hard I had to fight as the largest taxpayer in Monte County to say this will get fixed. And everyone else is like, it's just how it is, you can't change it, just accept it. And I am not that person, and I will go to Austin fighting for District 68.
Thank you. Jason Brinkley.
So this is a very quick election. Obviously, early voting starts next week. It runs next week, and then election day is January 23rd. So it's a very short timetable with 22 counties to get to know any of the candidates. You guys probably all know me. I've been your county judge for the last 6 years, and I've been involved in this community for literally my whole life. I'm conservative. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I think we need a strong, secure border. And once in a generation, you might move the needle on those issues. And it's great when you do, and you should focus on it when you do, when you can move that needle. But there's a lot of other things, and we've talked about them today, each one of us has, that we can do to truly help our communities. And we need to focus on that. These rural issues, such as rural broadband, education in rural areas, rural health care, these are things that are really impacting rural Texas, that are impacting these small communities that without these things would perish. We're very fortunate, maybe, in Cooke County to be growing. However, a lot of counties in the western part of this district are shrinking. They're dying. We need somebody to advocate for those communities. We need somebody to put energy in fixing those communities and solving problems for those communities. I think I've got 12 years of government experience that'll help me do that. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. John Barry.
So first I'd like to thank you guys for sitting here and listening to a bunch of politicians blow you. This has been a heck of an evening. With this being such a short window, there's so much that we have to earn your trust so quickly. I'm fortunate enough to have earned the endorsement of Mays Middleton, the third most conservative representative in the last session. For you Cooke County women, I also earned the endorsement of Ms. Diane Hill. So, endorsements I think are very important and very telling. I'm a conservative first. I'm a rural Texan as well. Proud of that. So as I go into Austin, I'm going to let my conservative principles and values guide me in my decision making. You guys are electing us to be up there to represent you and to fight for you and to be the voice for you up there. Not for our voices to decide, but for your voices. And that's to be accessible to you guys. There's going to be over 6,000 pieces of legislation filed in this session. And I want to hear from each and every one of you, your opinions and your guidance on it, so that I can reflect those opinions and those views when we go to make decisions in Austin. Thank you guys. I'm John Barry. I want to earn your vote.
Thank you. So that concludes the formal part of tonight. And after they come down from the stage, I do want to see if you can ask your questions directly to the candidates. And here's our President, Carrie Kingsbury.
I'd like to, again, thank you all for coming. I would like to